Let me tell you something right now that I wish someone had told me earlier in life. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your pain, your trauma, your regrets, or the things people said about you when you were too broken to fight back. You are not the worst thing you've ever done, and you are not the worst thing that was ever done to you. You might be carrying memories so heavy they make your chest hurt in the quiet hours of the night. You might be walking through life with invisible wounds that no one else sees, but you feel them every time you try to move forward and something inside whispers, "You don't deserve it, but I want you to hear me now." That voice, the one that tries to keep you small, the one that tells you you're not worthy, is not the truth. That voice is fear, and fear is a liar. You were not put on this earth just to suffer, just to survive, just to repeat the same story over and over again. You were born to grow, to rise, to heal, and to create a new story. One that isn't written by your past, but by the choices you make today. I know what it feels like to think that your past is a prison. I know what it feels like to believe that because you've failed before, you'll keep failing. Or because you've been abandoned, you're not lovable. Or because someone hurt you, you must have deserved it. But none of those things are true. They're echoes. Echoes of pain that never got processed, of hurt that never got spoken out loud, of shame that was never yours to carry. And the longer you listen to those echoes, the more they shape how you see yourself. And when you believe the wrong story about who you are, it becomes nearly impossible to grow into the person you're meant to become. That's why I'm here today, not to motivate you with quick quotes or perfect answers, but to look you in the eyes and say this: you are not broken. You are not too late. You are not stuck in your story. You are in the process of becoming. And everything you've been through, yes, even the hardest things, can become fuel, not chains. Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen a tree growing through a crack in the pavement? Nobody watered it. Nobody gave it space. Nobody believed it would make it. But it pushed through anyway. It kept reaching for the light even when everything around it said it would never survive. You are that tree. Your past may be the pavement, cold, heavy, cracked. But your future is still reaching for the sun. You don't have to pretend that your past didn't happen. Healing doesn't mean erasing. It means reclaiming. It means saying, yes, that happened. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I've made mistakes. But that's not where my story ends. Some people carry their past like a backpack filled with bricks. Every step forward is harder because they won't let go of the shame, the guilt, the memories. But I want you to imagine this. What if today you stopped walking with that weight? What if you took off the backpack and said, I don't need to carry this anymore? What if you made peace with the fact that what's behind you is behind you, and that where you're going is far more important than where you've been? You are allowed to change. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to stop being the person you were when you were in survival mode. You are allowed to evolve, even if the people around you don't understand it. Some people will always try to keep you in your past because that's where they left you. They don't want to see you rise because it challenges the story they tell about who you are. But your healing is not up for debate. Your worth is not up for negotiation. Your future is not up for discussion. You don't need everyone's approval to move forward. You just need your own permission. You just need one moment of courage. One deep breath where you say, I'm not going to let the past hold me back any longer. I know it's not easy. I know there are scars. I know there are nights when the memories feel louder than your dreams. But I also know this. You are stronger than you think. You are braver than you believe. And if you keep walking, even one small step at a time, you will get there. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to refuse to quit. Let today be the day you stop looking backward. Let today be the day you stop apologizing for your past and start celebrating your growth. Let today be the day you whisper to yourself, "This isn't who I am anymore. I'm becoming someone new." Let's talk about something most people avoid. Let's talk about guilt. The quiet kind. Not the kind that screams in your face, but the kind that whispers when the world is quiet, telling you that you should have known better, that you should have done more, that somehow this is your fault. You carry it like it's your identity. You go through your day smiling, working, surviving, but under it all is that silent voice reminding you of what you wish you could undo. And the longer you let guilt stay, the more it becomes part of the story you believe. But here's the truth. Guilt is not meant to live in you forever. Guilt is a signal, not a sentence. It's a sign to reflect, to learn, to grow, not to suffer endlessly. Maybe you've done things you're not proud of. Maybe you said things you wish you could take back. Maybe you hurt someone when you were hurting too. But carrying guilt, like it's your punishment, doesn't heal anything. It doesn't fix the past. It just steals your future. And you have a future, even if your past tried to convince you otherwise. You have a future that deserves your full presence. But you can't show up for that future if you're always living in yesterday. Forgive yourself, even if no one else has. Even if the apology you're waiting for hasn't come. Even if the person you hurt never says it's okay. You have to forgive yourself, not to forget what happened, but to free yourself from being chained to it, because the truth is, you cannot build a new life while punishing yourself for the old one. You cannot become something more while constantly dragging around the person you used to be. So, take a deep breath. Close your eyes and tell yourself what you've been waiting to hear. I made mistakes, but I am not a mistake. I've done wrong, but I am not wrong. I hurt and I've been hurt, but I choose healing now. You are allowed to forgive yourself. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to move forward, even if your inner critic says you don't deserve to. Because healing isn't about what you deserve. It's about what you need in order to become whole. And every human being, including you, deserves to feel whole again. Now let's talk about shame. Shame is not the same as guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. And shame is a liar too. Shame will make you believe you're unworthy of love. It will make you reject help, push people away, sabotage your own joy. It will convince you that if people knew the real you, they would leave. But that's a lie shame tells to stay in control. You have to expose it, speak it, break the silence. Because shame grows in darkness, but it cannot survive honesty. You are not what happened to you. You are not the worst version of yourself. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are not too broken to be rebuilt. You are not defined by what you went through. You are defined by how you rise from it, and no one gets to rewrite that part of your story but you. Now listen, healing isn't loud. It's not always dramatic or visible. Sometimes healing is sitting alone in a room and choosing not to respond to the pain the way you used to. Sometimes it's getting up and brushing your teeth after crying all night. Sometimes it's saying no for the first time, or yes, After a lifetime of fear, sometimes it's letting go of someone you love because you finally love yourself more. Healing isn't pretty. It's messy. It's full of steps forward and steps back. But that's what makes it real. That's what makes it honest, and that's what makes it powerful. Some people will never understand the depth of what you're healing from. Some people will think you should be over it by now. Some people will never know how brave you are just for making it through the day. But you're not doing this for them. You're healing for you, so that you don't pass the pain down, so that you can walk lighter, so that you can love freely, so that you can finally breathe again. And if no one has said this to you lately, let me say it now. I'm proud of you. You're doing better than you think. You're further than you give yourself credit for. And you are not alone. Not in your healing, not in your fight, not in your quiet victories. Your past might have written the beginning of your story, but you and only you get to write the rest. And when people tell you you've changed, say, yes, that was the point. You weren't born to stay stuck. You weren't born to repeat the same pain. You were born to grow, to rise, to become. If you're still holding on to a version of yourself that no longer fits, let it go. If you're still measuring your worth by who you were, update your story. You've outgrown the chapter, and that's not failure. That's transformation. Let the world be surprised when you show up new. Let the past be confused when you don't answer to the old names anymore. Let your future be the loudest proof that you made it out alive. Not just breathing, but becoming. And when doubt comes knocking, which it will, when fear tells you you're not ready, when memories try to drag you back, stand tall and say, that was me, but this is now. There comes a moment in your life when you realize the labels people gave you don't belong to you anymore. Maybe they never did. Maybe they were placed on you when you were too young to fight them. Maybe they were based on a version of you that was still learning, still growing, still figuring things out. And maybe you've carried those labels for so long you forgot they weren't yours to begin with. You've been called difficult. You've been called too quiet, too emotional, too dramatic, too lazy, too broken, too different. And over time, those words become mirrors. You look into them and you start to see what they told you to see. You stop looking for who you are and start believing who they said you were. But you're not here to live someone else's definition of you. You're not here to wear their labels like permanent tattoos. You're not here to be small just because someone else couldn't handle your light. Let me tell you something real. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that other people recognize. You are allowed to change the story. You are allowed to wake up one day and say, I no longer believe what they said about me, because what they said was based on their lens, not your truth. What they said was filtered through their pain, their fear, their projections, not your worth, and your worth, it's not up for debate. Some people only remember you for who you were at your lowest. They'll try to remind you of your past every time you rise. Not because they care about truth, but because your growth makes them uncomfortable. Because seeing you change forces them to look at where they've stayed the same. And you have to understand something. Not everyone is supposed to come with you. Some people belong in your history, not your future. Some people were only part of your story to teach you how to walk away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in freedom. You don't need to convince anyone that you've changed. You don't need to prove yourself to people who still see you through the lens of your past. Growth doesn't ask for applause. Healing doesn't wait for permission, so stop looking back to explain where you're headed. You're not going that way. You're not here to be understood by the past. You're here to be aligned with the future. And if you ever feel alone on this path, just remember, you're not the only one who had to rebuild from the ground up. You're not the only one who had to walk away from familiar things to find freedom. You're not the only one who had to leave behind people who didn't know how to love the healed version of you. It's hard, I know. It's lonely sometimes. But that loneliness is sacred. That space you feel, the emptiness, it's where new things grow. It's where you meet yourself again, this time with clarity. You are not here to stay in survival mode. You are not here to keep reliving pain just to stay loyal to an old story. You are here to build something new, a version of you that is not held hostage by your memories, a version of you that can love again, trust again, try again, dream again. But to do that, you've got to stop rehearsing the worst moments of your life. You've got to stop telling the same painful story over and over in your head. You've got to interrupt the pattern, because your brain, it believes repetition. Whatever you tell it often enough, it begins to accept as fact. So if you keep saying, "I'm not enough," your mind will look for reasons to agree. But if you start saying, "I am growing, I am healing, I am becoming," your mind will start building evidence for that too. Change your inner dialogue. Catch yourself when the past starts playing on repeat. Don't let old thoughts have free rent in the home of your future. And I want to tell you something else. The things you've been through, they weren't wasted. Even the most painful chapters, even the moments that broke you, they shaped you, yes. But they didn't define you, and now they can refine you. That broken heart, it taught you what love isn't. That betrayal, it taught you who not to trust and who to become. That loss, it reminded you how fragile time is. That mistake, it turned into a lesson that built your wisdom. Nothing is wasted, not when you decide to grow from it. You get to decide how the story ends. You get to decide what you carry forward and what you finally lay down. And sometimes the most powerful healing is found in saying, "I choose peace over proof. I choose healing over rehashing. I choose my future over my fear. Let the past rest, not because it didn't matter, but because it already happened. And no amount of replaying it will change it. But how you respond to it, that's where your power is. You are not the same person who walked into that storm. You're stronger now, wiser now, softer in the right places, tougher in the right places. And even if you're still figuring it out, you're not where you started. Give yourself that credit. Give yourself that grace. You don't owe your past anything, but you owe your future everything. So take a moment, right here, right now, and breathe in that truth. Let it sit in your chest like light. Let it push out the shame. Let it wash over the lies. Let it remind you, you are still becoming. And that is more than enough. Let's talk about identity. Not the name people call you, not the job you have, not the role you play in your family or your community, but the quiet truth of who you believe you are when no one's watching. Because that truth, that quiet inner identity, it shapes every decision you make. It shapes how you show up in the world. It shapes what you think you deserve in love, in life, in opportunity. And the hard part is, most of us didn't choose that identity. We inherited it. from the things people told us, from the wounds we didn't ask for, from the failures that left a mark. So we walk around carrying this quiet belief. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'll always mess things up. I don't belong. We don't say those words out loud, but we live by them. We play small. We settle. We self-sabotage. Not because we want to, but because deep down, we think it's who we are. But what if I told you your identity is not fixed? What if I told you that every single day you're shaping your identity through the choices you make? What you say to yourself when you fail. What you do when you feel fear. How you talk to yourself when you're alone. That's identity building. And you can rebuild it, brick by brick, moment by moment. You don't have to wait for a massive life event to reinvent yourself. You don't have to wait for some miracle to start becoming who you were always meant to be. You start with the smallest choices. When you wake up in the morning and make your bed, even though nobody's watching, you're telling yourself, I am a person who brings order into chaos. When you drink water instead of reaching for another coffee, you're telling yourself, I care about this body. When you pause before reacting in anger, when you choose to breathe, when you choose silence over rage, you're saying, I am not ruled by my past patterns. These small moments, they may seem invisible to the world, but they are the seeds of your future identity. They are your personal revolution. They are how you unlearn shame and relearn strength. Because here's what no one tells you when you're trying to change your life. Confidence doesn't come first. Action does. And then, through those actions, even small, even clumsy, even inconsistent, confidence grows. You're not going to feel strong on day one. You're not going to feel healed after one journal entry or one walk or one new habit. But you're not supposed to. This isn't about instant transformation. It's about quiet evolution. It's about walking through your days like someone who deserves to feel good, and letting your nervous system catch up. You are becoming someone new. Not through force, not through pretending, but through presence, through repetition, through showing up when it would be easier to give up. And let's talk about that. Giving up. Because you've probably had moments where you wanted to. Moments where it felt like no matter how much you try, nothing changes. Moments where the pain felt louder than the hope, and you thought, what's the point? But listen to me. The point is you. The point is your future. The point is the life waiting for you on the other side of not quitting. Every time you don't give up, you teach your body that it's safe to keep going. Every time you choose to stay in the process, even when it's boring, even when it's frustrating, you are building the kind of strength that no one can see, but everyone will feel. You don't need to change your entire life in one day. You just need to change your relationship with today. Start treating today like it matters. Start treating today like it's the first page of a new chapter, not a repeat of the old one. And when the voices come back, because they will, when the voice of your past says, you've always failed, when the voice of fear says, you'll never make it, when the voice of shame whispers, you're still the same, you stand up and answer back. You say, that was me, but I'm not there anymore. You say, I may still have scars, but I'm not bleeding. You say, I'm writing a new story, and your voice isn't in it. Because the moment you realize you are the author, not the character, everything changes. You stop letting other people narrate your life. You stop letting your past set the direction. You stop waiting for someone to rescue you, and you begin to rescue yourself. That's what healing is. Not a magic moment. Not a perfect breakthrough. But a quiet, daily reclaiming of who you are. A gentle remembering that you were always more than the pain. And while we're here, can we talk about the way you speak? To yourself? Because the world is loud enough. There's already enough judgment, enough comparison, enough noise trying to convince you that you're not doing enough. So don't let your own voice become another enemy. You deserve a voice inside. That feels like home, not like a battlefield. Start noticing how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. Start noticing what you whisper when you look in the mirror. Start noticing the tone of your inner dialogue when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when you're alone. Is it kind? Is it supportive? Or is it the same voice that wounded you years ago? Just wearing your tone now? You can change that voice. You can retrain it. You can teach it to be a friend, not a critic, because your healing doesn't just depend on what you do. It depends on how you talk to yourself while you do it. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to speak to yourself like someone who matters. Because you do. You've always mattered, even on the days you forgot that. And here's the thing. Your healing will not always be visible to others. People might not see how hard you're trying. They might not understand how much effort it takes to get out of bed, to show up, to keep going. But you know. You see it. You feel it. And that's enough. You don't need external validation to make your healing real. You don't need applause to know you're becoming stronger. You don't need everyone to understand your journey because it's not theirs to walk. This is your path, your story, your freedom, and every step you take. No matter how slow it counts. So keep going. Keep speaking life over your past. Keep rewriting the story every single day. Because even if you've made every mistake, even if you've been lost for years, even if the world told you it's too late, you can still begin again today. Let's talk about pain. Not in the way people usually do, where they tell you to just forget it and move on, or to stay positive and pretend it didn't hurt. Let's talk about it honestly, because the truth is, pain changes you, and if you don't process it, it becomes the lens you see yourself through. You start to believe you are the pain. You start to believe your story ends with heartbreak. You start to believe the pain is who you are, not just something that happened. But here's the truth the world rarely says out loud. Pain is real, but it is not permanent. It is not your identity. And you do not have to keep carrying it just to prove that it happened. There is a difference between remembering what shaped you and letting it define you. You can honor the experience without being imprisoned by it. You can carry the wisdom without dragging the weight. You can say, yes, that happened to me, and still say, but it's not all of me, because you're more than the pain. You're more than the moment you broke. You're more than the silence you sat in when no one checked on you. You're more than what they did. You're more than who you used to be when you didn't know how to cope. Your past may explain how you got here, but it does not decide where you go next. And I know fear wants you to stay in the past. Fear says it's safer there. At least it's familiar, right? At least you know how to survive that pain. But listen to me. Survival is not the same as living. Survival is not peace. Survival is not joy. Survival is not purpose. You weren't created to just survive. You were created to heal, to grow, to create, to connect, to live, and to do that. You have to stop seeing yourself only through the lens of pain. You have to start building new beliefs. Beliefs that serve your future, not just protect your past. It starts with the decision to challenge your thoughts instead of obeying them. The decision to say, just because I believed this for years doesn't mean it's true. The decision to stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? And how can I grow from it now? Because every belief you have was planted by something, a person, an experience, a wound, a fear. And just because a belief has roots doesn't mean it's truth. You can dig it up. You can replace it. You can plant something better. Like, I am allowed to be loved, even if I've felt abandoned. I am allowed to be confident, even if I've been rejected. I am allowed to succeed even if I've failed before. I am allowed to be free, even if I was stuck for a long time. You are allowed to believe in new things. You are allowed to believe in you, and when fear shows up, because it will, don't wait for it to go away. Use it. Use fear as a flashlight. It only shows up when something matters. It only gets loud when you're getting close to change. It only fights you when it knows you're about to leave the past behind. So stop waiting to feel fearless. Start moving while you're scared. That's where real growth happens. Let fear walk beside you, but don't let it lead. You lead. You choose the direction. And every step you take through fear weakens its power. Because fear can't survive in movement. Fear needs stillness. Fear needs you to stay frozen. But you are not frozen anymore. You are moving. You are healing. You are becoming. You are writing a comeback story. One that doesn't ignore the pain, but one that refuses to let pain have the final word. Maybe people wrote you off. Maybe you disappeared into the background for a while. Maybe you spent months, years, stuck in patterns you're not proud of. But you're not stuck anymore. You are rewriting the script, not from perfection, but from intention. You're getting back up, and that matters more than any fall. You don't need a clean record to start again. You don't need a perfect plan to become someone new. You don't need to prove to the world that you're worthy of this next chapter. You only need to prove it to yourself. And even that doesn't need to be loud. Let your life be the proof. Let your quiet consistency be the proof. Let your gentle self-forgiveness be the proof. Let your peaceful silence be the proof. You're becoming someone who doesn't react from old pain. You're becoming someone who doesn't settle for chaos. You're becoming someone who knows their value without begging to be seen. That's power. That's real transformation. And it's happening right now, every time you decide not to give up. Every time you make one new choice. Every time you say, I am no longer who I used to be. You don't owe the world a perfect version of you. You don't owe them a performance. You don't owe them a single explanation for why you're no longer available for your old life. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself space to grow. You owe yourself the gift of starting again, without apology. So if today is the day you choose to take your power back, if today is the day you say, no more pretending, no more hiding, no more living like I'm still broken, then let it be that day. Let this be your comeback moment. Let this be the line between who you were and who you're becoming. And when someone asks what happened, you don't need a long answer. Just smile and say, I remembered who I am. Let's talk about something most people avoid. Forgiving yourself. Not just saying the words in your mind, but really looking in the mirror and deciding that you're not going to keep punishing yourself for something you cannot change. Because here's the truth that hurts until it heals. You did the best you could back then, with what you knew, with what you had, with who you were. And if you could have done better, you would have. But now you can do better. And that's what matters most. You don't need to keep carrying that version of yourself like a scarlet letter. You don't need to keep replaying that choice, that failure, that season where you fell apart. You are not the person you were when you made that mistake. You've grown. You've grieved. You've learned. And the most powerful form of growth is when you look at the past and whisper, I release you. Not because it didn't matter, but because it already did. Some people will try to remind you of who you were. They'll say you can't change. They'll say you're just pretending. But they didn't walk through the fire with you. They didn't feel the nights you couldn't breathe. They didn't witness the quiet rebuilding. So their opinion isn't truth, it's just noise, and noise doesn't deserve to guide your life. You don't need to be forgiven by them to be free. You don't need a perfect apology to finally heal. You don't even need all the pieces to make sense. You just need this moment, this one decision to stop defining yourself by what went wrong, because the version of you that made those choices, that version was surviving. That version was lost. Tired, hurting, afraid, but look at you now, still standing, still trying, still here, and that's not weakness. That's strength that refuses to give up. So forgive the younger version of you, the impulsive version, the scared version, the numb version. Forgive the one who didn't know better, the one who ignored the red flags, the one who stayed too long, the one who left too soon, the one who broke things, the one who didn't speak up, the one who gave up, the one who hid, because they got you here. And now it's your turn to lead with wisdom. But here's something you have to accept too. Healing doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming whole. You don't have to get everything right to be worthy of peace. You don't need to be unbreakable to be deserving of love. You don't need to erase every flaw to be proud of your growth. Stop chasing perfection like it's the prize. Perfection was never the goal. Presence is. And presence means this. I am here in this moment, no longer fighting the past, no longer fearing the future. I am choosing peace with all that I am and all that I'm not. Because peace isn't about fixing everything. Peace is about accepting what you can't fix and building forward anyway. You can carry your story without shame. You can honor your struggle without apology. You can remember the pain without reliving it. You don't have to pretend it didn't happen. You just have to stop giving it control over who you are today. And maybe that's the real healing, not when the past disappears, but when it stops deciding your worth. You see, too many people live in a tug of war. Pulling on one side is the guilt. Pulling on the other is the hope. And somewhere in the middle, you're trying to live a life that makes sense. But the moment you let go of the rope, the moment you stop fighting your past and start building your present, you finally feel free. And in that freedom, something beautiful happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. Not the critic. Not the echo of someone who left. Not the shame disguised as motivation. But your voice. The one that says, I deserve better now. I can make peace with who I was. I am safe in who I'm becoming. And maybe no one taught you how to do this. Maybe no one modeled self-forgiveness for you. Maybe all you ever saw was people holding on to resentment like a badge. But you can be the first. You can break the pattern. You can choose softness where others chose punishment. You can choose grace where others chose silence. You can sit with yourself and say, I was doing my best. I was doing what I could. I was hurting. I was trying. I was learning. And that is enough. Because the moment you stop demanding perfection before healing, you open the door to real, lasting change. You stop hiding from yourself. You stop running from the mirror. You start looking yourself in the eyes again, not with regret, but with love. Not the loud, dramatic kind of love, but the quiet kind, the steady kind, the kind that says, no matter what I've been through, I still choose to treat myself with kindness. That is the kind of love that rebuilds you. That is the kind of love that sets you free. There is a quiet moment in your healing journey when something shifts. You stop asking, will people ever forgive me? And you start asking, can I finally forgive myself? And that shift, it's not loud, not dramatic, but it's powerful. Because when you stop living for permission and begin living from purpose, you take your power back. For so long, you've tried to prove that you're different now. You've tried to explain the pain. You've tried to defend your growth. But here's what you need to hear. You don't have to prove your healing to anyone. You just have to live it. Your actions will speak louder than your apologies. Your peace will speak louder than your past. Your alignment will speak louder than your old mistakes. And what is alignment? It's when your values match your behavior. When who you are on the inside finally meets how you show up on the outside. When you stop living in guilt and start living on purpose. See, guilt will keep you frozen. It'll make you think you have to keep punishing yourself in order to grow. But guilt is not a growth strategy. Guilt is a warning light. It's meant to guide you, not to define you. When you live in guilt, you shrink. When you live in alignment, you expand. You speak differently. You walk differently. You choose differently. Not because you're trying to be someone else, but because you're finally being you. And you know what's even more powerful than being forgiven? Being free. Free from the need to explain your past. Free from the shame that used to echo in your silence. Free from the old identity that told you who you were supposed to be. You were never just your titles. You were never just your trauma. You were never just someone's mistake, or someone's burden, or someone's regret. You were always more. And now you get to step into that truth. No more living small. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. No more replaying the moment everything fell apart. You've spent enough time surviving. Now it's time to live. But here's the part they don't talk about enough. Living again isn't always easy, even when it's right. Because when you've spent so long in pain, peace feels unfamiliar. When you've spent so long apologizing, confidence feels arrogant. When you've spent so long hiding, visibility feels terrifying. But don't let that discomfort confuse you. It's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. Of course it feels strange. Of course it feels risky. You're walking without armor now. You're showing up with an open heart, not because you've forgotten the past, but because you've outgrown it. That's courage. That's healing. And yes, the world might still try to remind you of who you used to be. They might still throw the past in your face, but you don't live there anymore. You don't owe them the version of you they're comfortable with. You don't owe them access to a story they only watched from the outside. You owe yourself the future you never thought was possible. You owe yourself a life that isn't built on guilt, but on growth. And every time you choose peace, over shame, over fear, over performance, you get one step closer to that future. So how do you begin? You start by asking, what kind of life would I build if I believed I truly deserve it? What kind of choices would I make if I wasn't trying to earn love but live it? What kind of person would I be if I finally let go of who I was and stepped into who I'm meant to become? Let your answers guide your steps. Let your days reflect your healing. Let your voice become the sound of someone who has finally come home to themselves. And hear this deeply. You do deserve it. You deserve good things. You deserve quiet mornings. You deserve relationships that don't trigger your old wounds. You deserve to rest without guilt. You deserve to grow without shame. You deserve to feel joy, not as a reward, but as your natural state. That doesn't mean everything will be easy. It just means you won't be walking backward anymore. It just means you won't be making decisions based on pain. It just means you'll no longer abandon yourself to feel safe in someone else's world. You've come too far for that. You've grown too much to shrink again. So today, maybe not loudly, maybe not perfectly, maybe not without fear, but today, let it be the day you finally stop apologizing for your healing. Let today be the day you stop dragging your old identity into your new life. Let today be the day you forgive the silence, forgive the struggle, forgive yourself. Because you are not the person who made those choices anymore. You are the person who survived them. You are the person who is still here. Not by accident, but by grace. And that grace? It's not something you earn. It's something you receive. So take it. Let it in. Let it wash over all the stories you were told about what you are or what you're not. Let it become your foundation. Let it become your fuel. You don't need to fight your past. You just need to stop letting it lead. And when you do, you'll remember something you always knew, that even when you felt lost, even when you felt broken, there was still something inside you whispering. You were meant for more. At some point in your journey, you realize the past isn't chasing you anymore. You're just still running from it. Not because you're weak, but because you got so used to protecting yourself that you forgot you're safe now. And I want to say something simple, but powerful. You don't have to keep living as the version of you who was trying to survive. You don't have to keep responding from old pain. You don't have to keep proving anything to the ghosts of who you used to be. There is no need to fear your past when you've finally made peace with it. And no, that doesn't mean forgetting it. It means reclaiming it. It means saying that was part of my story, but it's not my whole story. That's what happened, but it's not who I am. That shaped me, but it doesn't control me. Your healing begins the moment you stop asking your past for permission to move forward. Because here's the truth. The version of you that made it through that pain. They didn't know how to rest. They didn't know how to receive love. They didn't know how to feel safe. They didn't know how to say no. But you do now. You've earned that wisdom, and it's time to use it. See, we talk so much about boundaries with other people. But what about boundaries with your past self? Yes, your past self. the one who made those decisions, the one who accepted less than they deserved, the one who didn't know what you know now. You can't let that version of you run the show anymore. You can love them, forgive them, thank them for getting you this far, but you can't let them lead. Because if you keep living through old pain, you'll keep repeating old patterns. You'll keep entering rooms already expecting rejection. You'll keep sabotaging good things before they have time to grow. You'll keep chasing people who feel familiar instead of safe. But the moment you say, "I love who I was, but I no longer follow her pain," you begin living a new life, and it feels quiet at first. You don't scream it from rooftops. You don't announce it to the world. You just start making different choices. You rest without guilt. You leave the room when it no longer feels right. You trust your body when it says something feels off. You choose peace even when chaos tries to pull you back in. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it feels like you're betraying your past, but you're not. You're honoring it by doing something different. You're saying, that chapter mattered, but it doesn't get to write the whole book. You're saying, I'm still allowed to grow, even if others don't understand it. You're saying, I can move forward, even if the past doesn't get closure, because closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes it's a choice to stop reopening wounds just to understand them, a choice to stop needing answers before you allow yourself to feel free, a choice to say, peace matters more than proof. That's real freedom, not needing everyone to understand, not needing your past to be rewritten, just living now as the person who refuses to keep bleeding from old cuts. And when you build this new identity, you do it quietly, daily, lovingly. You build it when you stop calling yourself names under your breath. You build it when you allow yourself to rest and say, I deserve this. You build it when you choose what's right over what's familiar. You build it when you look at who you used to be and say, I am proud of how far I've come. Because identity is not something you find. It's something you build. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that's revealed through action, intention, and deep compassion. You don't need a label. You don't need to fit into a box. You don't need to match anyone's idea of who you should be. You just need to live aligned with who you are becoming. So when the old memories return, as they will, when they try to pull you back into guilt, shame, or confusion, don't fight them. Just greet them like an old friend. Nod, acknowledge, and say, thank you for reminding me, but I don't live there anymore. Because you don't. You've moved, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and every time you show up with love instead of fear, with grace instead of guilt, with hope instead of memory, you become more of who you really are. You are not the broken parts. You are the whole heart that kept beating anyway. You are not the story they told. You are the voice you reclaimed. You are not just what happened. You are what you chose next, and you are still choosing, still writing, still becoming. There's something powerful that happens when you stop hiding your story, not to relive it, not to gain sympathy, not to reopen wounds, but to remind yourself that you survived. You made it through. And not everyone did. You carried things silently that others didn't see. And you kept going. Even when your legs were shaking, even when your mind told you to quit. And now you don't have to run from your story. You get to share it, not as a scar, but as strength. You get to say, yes, I've been through some things, but I'm still standing. And that matters. But let's be honest. Telling your story can be complicated. You don't want to bleed all over people. You don't want to become trapped in the identity of pain. You don't want to define yourself by trauma alone. That's why there's a balance. You tell your story when you're ready, not to re-traumatize, but to reclaim. You don't owe anyone the full version. You don't owe everyone the details. You just owe yourself the truth that you're allowed to be proud of, where you came from without staying stuck there. You're allowed to say, I've been through hard things, and I still get to be soft. I've faced silence, and I still get to be heard. I've made mistakes, and I still get to grow. I've been lost, and I still get to lead myself forward. This is what it means to become a safe space for yourself, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You stop abandoning yourself every time things get hard. You stop talking down to yourself when you feel fear. You stop judging your healing just because someone else doesn't understand it. You sit with yourself. You breathe. You listen. You remind your inner child that the danger has passed. You remind your present self that you are not alone anymore because you are here now. That is real safety. And here's what happens when you become your own safe space. You stop begging others to give you what you never gave yourself. You stop chasing approval. You stop performing for acceptance. You stop living for applause. You stop asking, do they see me? And start asking, do I see me? Because here's the truth. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Not everyone will understand your new boundaries. Not everyone will be happy that you've changed. And that's okay. Their validation isn't required. Their understanding isn't necessary. Their permission was never the missing piece. Your worth is not up for negotiation. It doesn't rise and fall based on who claps for you. It doesn't disappear just because someone couldn't see it. It lives in you. It grows when you act in alignment. It multiplies when you speak to yourself with kindness. It shines when you choose what's right for you, even if no one understands it yet. So stop dimming your light to fit inside someone else's shadow. Stop shrinking your truth to keep others comfortable. Stop second-guessing your power just because someone didn't. Applaud the first time you used it. You are not here to convince anyone. You are not here to perform. You are here to walk in truth. And truth walks quietly. It doesn't need an announcement. It doesn't beg for attention. It just moves with clarity. So when people ask, what happened to you? You don't need a long speech. You can simply say, I woke up. I healed. I remembered who I was. And then, keep walking. Let your peace be your response. Let your energy speak for itself. Let your presence carry the message. I am no longer ruled by the past. You don't need to relive every detail to inspire someone. You don't need to revisit every wound to prove you've healed. You just need to live aligned. To show, not tell, what it means to rise. Because rising isn't loud. Rising doesn't always come with a spotlight. Rising looks like a calm mind, a deep breath, a steady step, a quiet confidence that says, I know who I am now, and I don't need the world to confirm it. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not perfection, not applause, but this gentle certainty that your story still matters, but it no longer defines you. Let's talk about something no one prepares you for on the healing journey. Joy. Not pain, not survival, not fighting, but actual joy. Because when you've been in survival mode, For so long, joy doesn't always feel safe. It doesn't feel natural. It feels strange. It feels fragile. You've spent so much time bracing for the next heartbreak, the next disappointment, the next letdown, that when happiness finally shows up at your door, you don't trust it. You don't open the door fully. You peek. You smile politely. But deep down, you're already preparing for it to leave, and that's the pain nobody talks about. Not the pain of being hurt, but the pain of no longer knowing how to receive good things without fear. So if you've felt that, I want you to know you are not broken. You are not cold. You are not ungrateful. You are just healing. And when you've lived through chaos, peace can feel like a threat. But that doesn't mean you're not ready. It just means you need to learn how to feel safe again. Not just with people, but with happiness itself. It starts with permission. Give yourself permission to smile fully, to laugh without watching the door, to rest without guilt, to love without performing, to feel good even when you still have scars. You don't need to deserve happiness. You just need to let it in. Let it land in small moments. Let it stay longer each time. Let it become familiar again. Joy doesn't mean your past didn't happen. It means your past doesn't get to write every chapter. You've earned peace, not as a reward for suffering, but because you are still here, and being here is enough. So take the pressure off. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfectly healed to be worthy of good things. You don't need a spotless story to start feeling whole again. You just need to open the door, slowly, softly, fully, and say, I'm ready to feel something better now. And if the fear comes back, that's okay. Fear always knocks when something good enters. Fear says, be careful. Don't trust this. Don't get too comfortable. But you can answer back gently. I hear you. But this time, I'm choosing joy anyway, because you're not in the same place you used to be. You're not the same person. You're wiser now. You're more grounded. You can handle good things. And you can handle what happens if they shift. You don't need to guard yourself from joy anymore. You don't need to sabotage what feels good just because you don't feel ready. You are ready, even if it feels new. Even if your nervous system trembles. Even if your past tries to convince you to play it safe. This is where healing expands, not just when the pain stops, but when you finally let love back in. When you stop analyzing every compliment. When you stop flinching every time someone gets close. When you stop questioning every moment of peace. When you finally believe, this is allowed, this is mine. This is not going to be taken away. And maybe for you, joy doesn't look like loud celebration. Maybe it's quiet. Maybe it's sipping tea in the sunlight. Maybe it's a deep breath with no urgency. Maybe it's falling asleep without overthinking everything. Maybe it's letting someone in, slowly but with your heart open. Whatever it looks like, trust this. You can have it. You don't need to rehearse the pain forever. You don't need to keep bracing for impact. This is your life now, and you are emotionally available to live it. You are no longer emotionally unavailable to your own joy. You are no longer numb to goodness. You are no longer playing small just to protect yourself from disappointment. You are stepping into your life fully, presently, and with grace. And the most powerful thing you can do next? Keep choosing it. Keep choosing to stay. Stay present. Stay soft. Stay open. The past already had its turn. Now it's your time. Time to feel. Time to receive. Time to remember that joy is not a betrayal of your story. It's a continuation of it. Because you're not just the person who survived. you are also the person who gets to thrive. Learning how to trust again after you've been let down isn't easy, especially when the people you trusted the most were the ones who left, or the ones who lied, or the ones who didn't protect you when they promised they would. It does something to you. It creates this invisible wall, not built out of anger, but out of fear. Not because you don't want to love, but because you don't want to break again. So what do you do with that? How do you open your heart again without handing it to the same pain? You don't rush it. You don't force it. You rebuild it. Slowly, quietly, intentionally. You start by learning to trust the one person who won't leave, yourself. Because the truth is, most of us don't lose trust in people first. We lose trust in ourselves. We blame ourselves for missing the signs. We shame ourselves for staying too long. We punish ourselves for not protecting our peace earlier. But the version of you that got hurt, they weren't weak. They weren't foolish. They were open. They were learning. They were hoping. And that matters. Because hope is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. So if you're learning to trust again, start here. Trust yourself to see more clearly now. Trust yourself to walk away sooner next time. Trust yourself to listen when your body speaks before your mind has words. Trust yourself to not ignore what you feel just to keep someone in your life. Because when you trust yourself deeply, you stop needing others to prove they're safe. You already know you'll be okay, no matter what they do. And from that place, you stop living on edge. You stop waiting for the next storm. You stop rehearsing heartbreak in your mind just so it doesn't catch you off guard. You learn to sit in the quiet without fear. You learn to feel peace without apology. You learn to stop pulling away just because things feel good. Because now you know you can handle whatever comes. That's real emotional strength. Not pretending nothing hurts, but staying grounded even when something does. Yes, the triggers may still come. Yes, the old thoughts might still whisper. Yes, the memories might still knock at midnight. But now you know how to respond. Now you know how to breathe through it. Now you know how to stay steady. You don't fall into the spiral anymore. You don't disappear. You remain, because you're not living in reaction. You're living in alignment. And when you live in alignment, something powerful happens. You stop apologizing for who you're becoming. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop over-explaining your silence. You stop shrinking every time someone doesn't approve of your healing. You become unapologetically yourself. Not because you're trying to prove a point, but because you've made peace with the fact that not everyone will understand the new you. And that's okay. You weren't made to fit. You were made to evolve. And if your evolution makes someone uncomfortable, let it. If your softness confuses them, let it. If your silence makes them nervous, let it. You don't owe anyone the older version of you just because it made them comfortable. You're not here to play a role in their story. You're here to write your own. So walk forward, even if it's slow, even if it's shaky, even if your voice trembles when you speak your truth. Keep walking, because this next chapter, it doesn't need permission. It doesn't need to start with applause. It just needs you to show up. You've done enough apologizing. You've done enough doubting. You've done enough hiding behind guilt that no longer belongs to you. You are free now to speak clearly, to walk fully, to live without carrying the weight of your past on your shoulders. Because your story is not about who hurt you. It's Not about what you lost. It's not about where you fell. It's about how you stood back up, how you kept your heart open, how you built something beautiful from the ashes, how you kept walking, one honest step at a time, even when no one was watching. This is your new chapter, and no one gets to define it but you. There's something sacred about turning pain into wisdom. Not because the pain was fair, not because it made sense, but because you refused to let it end you. You chose to make something from it. A lesson, a boundary, a deeper sense of compassion, a softer way of walking through the world. And maybe you haven't realized it yet. But the very things you thought disqualified you might be the exact things that make you most powerful. Because the truth is, your story is no longer just for you. Someone out there is feeling what you once felt. Someone is crying the tears you used to cry. Someone is walking through the same storm you barely made it out of. And while you may never meet them, your healing still touches them. Every time you live in truth instead of fear. You don't have to preach. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to become a motivational speaker. You just have to live honestly. And when you do, your presence becomes a quiet teacher. Your peace becomes a permission slip. Your choices become a roadmap. Because nothing speaks louder than someone who has been through hell and still chooses to love, still chooses to believe, still chooses to grow. You're no longer living as a victim of your past. You're living as a student of your experience. You're living as a teacher of strength, without needing to be perfect. And that shift is everything, because victims wait for rescue. Teachers use the pain to build meaning. Victims stay stuck in the why. Teachers move forward with the how. And you are moving forward. You're building a life based on lessons, not labels. You're letting the past teach you, but not lead you. You're standing in the mirror and saying, "This is who I choose to be now." You're no longer asking the world to validate your healing. You're simply living it. That's how we rise. Not with noise, not with perfection, but with steady alignment, with actions that match your truth. And when you build meaning from struggle, it frees you. Because now the past doesn't have to be something you run from. It becomes something you grew through. It becomes something you use to light the way for someone who can't see yet. You're not carrying pain for pain's sake. You're carrying wisdom. You're carrying experience. You're carrying insight that can't be found in a book, only in the fire you walked through. And maybe you don't always see your own growth. Maybe you're still focused on where you want to be. But pause for a second. Look back, not to dwell, but to recognize. You've changed. You've softened. You've become more careful with your time, more intentional with your words, more grounded in who you are. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because you kept showing up when it would have been easier to disappear, and now you're becoming someone you can be proud of. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because you chose to rise, even when it was hard. You don't need to explain your growth. You don't need to earn peace. You don't need to be anyone other than exactly who you are right now. And who you are is someone becoming whole, someone becoming strong, someone becoming deeply, beautifully free. You didn't just survive, you learned, you rebuilt, and now you are quietly becoming a safe place for yourself and for others who still think they're too far gone. Let your life say what words can't. Let your healing do the teaching. Let your strength speak in silence, because nothing is more powerful than a person who turned pain into purpose without ever losing their softness. Let's talk about what it means to live a life rooted in self-respect, not self-defense. Because for so long, you were protecting yourself. You were walking through life guarded, tense, careful, not because you were dramatic, but because you were surviving. And when you live in defense for years, you start to think that's who you are. Closed off, quiet, sharp, distrustful. But the truth is, that was a response, not your identity. Just a response to pain that came. Too fast, too loud, and without warning. Now you're learning something different. You're learning how to live with self-respect. Which means you don't need to explain your boundaries. You don't need to justify your peace. You don't need to prepare for betrayal in every conversation. You're not in danger anymore. And that means you can relax your shoulders. You can soften your tone. You can stop expecting the worst and start allowing the good. That's the shift. That's the healing. When you realize that self-respect doesn't need to be loud, it doesn't need to be aggressive, it's quiet, it's calm, it's deeply unshakable. And now you know the difference. You're no longer reacting from old wounds. You're responding from new clarity. That's what happens when you no longer need the world to give you closure, because you've already found it within yourself. And let's be honest, most of the time, the closure you're waiting for, it never comes. The apology you deserved, never spoken. The explanation you needed, never offered. The person who hurt you moved on without a second thought. But that doesn't mean you have to carry the ending forever. Because closure isn't something they give you. It's something you decide. You get to say, I may never get the words I hoped for, but I won't keep giving my energy to a moment that's already over. You get to say, I won't pause my growth waiting for someone else to understand it. You get to say, I won't tie my healing to someone else's silence, and that is freedom. Because when you finally let go of needing closure, you make space for something more powerful, creation. You begin to create the story that you want to live, not the one they abandoned, not the one they left unfinished, but the one you choose. With every breath, every boundary, every step forward, you become the author again. Not the victim of an old chapter, not the ghost of someone else's ending. You are writing in real time now, and that means you get to choose what this next part looks like. And maybe it looks like softness. Maybe it looks like showing up fully, without fear. Maybe it looks like not explaining your healing to people who only knew your pain. Maybe it looks like peace. Not the kind of peace you perform for others, but the kind you feel when you sit with yourself in stillness. And no longer hear the echo of the past. That's real power, not noise, not revenge, not being louder than the pain, but finally being unbothered by it. Because your worth is not a debate. Your healing is not a group discussion. Your future is not something to vote on. It's yours. So if there are still pieces of your past that feel unfinished, let them stay unfinished. You don't need to reopen the wound just to close it cleanly. You've already survived it. And that is enough. Let this be the season where you stop chasing closure and start living from clarity. Let this be the chapter where you stop defending yourself and start respecting yourself, because you are not the broken version. You are not the one who's still waiting. You are not what they left behind. You are who you chose to become. In the quiet, in the dark, in the moments no one else saw, and now you are finally here. So here we are, at the edge of everything you've been carrying, at the threshold of a new life. Not because everything has suddenly changed, but because you have. You're no longer the person who needs to be rescued. You're no longer the person who lives in reaction to your past. You're no longer the one who confuses being strong with being silent. You've walked through fire, and now you carry light. You've lived in shadows, and now you know how to find the sun again. It wasn't instant, it wasn't easy, but it was worth it. And now you're ready to step forward, not as someone pretending to be okay, but as someone who is finally okay with who they are. You've spent years trying to make peace with your story, trying to fix it, erase it, outrun it, but now you know. You don't have to fix it. You just have to let it rest, because it happened. It shaped you, but it does not define you. You define you, with every choice you make, with every boundary you protect, with every new beginning you say yes to. Even when your voice shakes, and maybe the past will still whisper, that's okay. Let it whisper. But don't let it drive. You're holding the pen now. And this next chapter, it belongs to the version of you who finally understands. You are not what you've been through. You are what you've become because of it. You are the courage that stayed when everything else left. You are the softness that remained even after everything tried to harden you. You are the breath that kept moving when the weight was too much. You are the heart that didn't close. And that is your victory. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But it's real. And it's yours. So if you need a moment to say goodbye to the past, take it now. Close your eyes. Breathe deep. And whisper gently to the version of you who survived. All of this. Thank you. Thank you for carrying me through the dark. Thank you for doing your best. Thank you for protecting me when I didn't know how to protect myself. But you can rest now. I'll take it from here. Let that goodbye echo softly. Let it release you. Let it remind you that you're no longer stuck. You're no longer lost. You're no longer living in a chapter that ended long ago. Because this is now. This is yours. And everything ahead of you has room for peace, love, laughter, softness, stillness, truth, healing. Everything ahead of you has room for you. Not the masked version, not the apologetic one, not the one who shrinks to fit, but the real you, the full you, the healed and healing you. And as you walk forward, don't wait for the world to validate this transformation. Let your peace speak for itself. Let your choices show what you no longer tolerate. Let your presence be your proof. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to explain. You don't have to prove. Just keep becoming. Keep walking. Keep choosing the life you once thought was impossible, because now you know it's not only possible, it's yours. And when someone asks you, how did you do it? How did you let go? How did you move on? How did you heal? You can smile softly and say, I stopped letting the past define me. I started living like I matter. Now, because you do, and you always have,